Greetings once again, YouTube fans. This is Tim, N2LCJ, with yet another interesting project. This video is going to be part one of a series of videos that I'm going to do leading up to a SOTA or POTA activation that I'm going to be doing once the weather gets warm. Now, it's 12 degrees out right now, and I ain't going to sit by a radio freezing my rear off, but good performance is a result of good planning. So let's talk about the QRP rig that I'm planning to use for my POTA SOTA activation. This is a Kenwood TS430V, a Japan market rig with 10 watts peak output that I purchased from eBay seller Japan store Happy for about $160, including shipping, and it works. I was able to check into e-cars with this rig today on my NFED dipole and a manual tuner, and I'd consider that a success. Now, why this radio, you ask? First is durability. The Kenwood TS430 in any form is a legend. If there ever was a radio I'd want with me out in the woods or in a tent while it's raining in a thunderstorm, it'd be this one. Of all the possible QRP rigs, this would probably win the category of most likely to work after getting yanked off a picnic bench by the SO239 when you accidentally snagged the coax on your shoe while carrying a paper plate full of hot dogs and beans. Second is price. At under $200, it becomes almost disposable, or worth at least half that as parts for another rig. The most important reason, though, is that I sort of like it. Now, by now you're saying, Tim, I've seen your videos, and for the price of the radios that you have and the time you've invested in this stuff, you could have a nice IC 7300 or an FT 991, or for QRP, why not buy a Zygu or something? And the answer is because I like to play with things. Ham radio is absolutely no fun when you don't have to make things work, figure things out, or fix something that's busted. Why? Because that's how you learn, that's how you do, and that's how you grow. I learned more about ham radio rebuilding and learning how to zero beat a 1950s Gonset transmitter that I could have probably learned from anything. And I had fun doing it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I picture these guys with radios costing 5 figures and sitting in front of their perfect jacks and twiddling around the dial and just being bored as hell and wondering why ham radio is so much more fun when they had their old Yaesu FT101 and a homemade wire antenna. I mean, after all, not every weekend is a contest. Years ago I had a friend had a saying which I'll paraphrase: show me a man who has the best of everything, and I'll show you a man who's bored as hell with it. So if you're sitting there with your brand new rig and looking at it, wondering why you're just bored with ham radio, try ditching the auto tuner and FT8 and dig into some meat and potatoes, old-fashioned operation. If you're bored with the automatic, learn to drive a stick shift. After all, we're ham radio operators, not ham radio talkers. Maybe even take a chance on buying a radio from Japan and see what you can do with it. It really is fun having a radio that you don't need a nifty manual to use. Now let's get down to the downsides from using one of these radios. And I've only had this a short time, but this is just kind of what I've figured out from handling the radio over the last couple days. First is weight, closely followed by size. This is not a backpack radio, as you can see. I don't know, probably weighs about 15 pounds or so. I might be wrong, maybe 20. The radio draws max 4.5 amps. So while I have ideas on a battery system, I don't have anything nailed down in stone yet, but either way, it's not going to be too light. Second, this particular radio does not have any onboard filters or DSP. Now, honestly, I'm not sure how vital that is, because I've never worked under these conditions, and it'd be a definite drawback if I was working CW, but I'm not, so I don't care. But if I was working CW, I'm going to do a future video on a cheap little wonder called the Radio Shack DSP-40 speaker, which operates as well, or as close to as well, of any of the radios that I've seen that have onboard filters. It really is fantastic, and they're dirt cheap. I've got one right up here on my TS430 behind me. Third drawback is a little subjective. Even though I like this radio, Compared to other Kenwood offerings, this thing is just plain ugly. The pewter colored paint always remind me of a silver coated radio that makes it look like it's coated in tobacco tar. You can almost picture this radio sitting on a bench being used by an old guy with a push broom mustache with an ashtray full of camel butts running nonstop on a 3-day contest. If you're lucky, your TS430, if you have one, hasn't been exposed to that kind of environment. This one fortunately hasn't. But even if it was, I read something online about a guy doing something with his. When he got it, he took the covers off it and stuck it in the dishwasher, let it dry out for a few days, and the radio worked fine. Not exactly something I'd recommend. So the purpose of this video wasn't to be instructive or to answer any question, but to set the stage for what I hope is going to be a really neat adventure that I have planned. And in upcoming segments, we'll be testing this radio out in real-world conditions as I puzzle out things like antennas, how I want to set everything up, and portability. Now, we're not going to be doing any backpacking, but I'd like to have something that I can reasonably carry with just a couple bags and set up wherever I want. So we'll be testing this out in real-world conditions and preparing for a real Parker Summit activation. This is going to be fun. Until next time, see you on the air.